Hi folks, it's CALC here, and in this video we're going to take a deep dive look at the modulation side of the Summit Polysynth. Summit has an incredible amount of modulation opportunities. In fact, you can almost think of Summit as really like a modular synth in its own right, using the mod matrix. Without any further ado, let's jump straight in and take a good look at how we can use all of this. This video we're going to look at the modulation aspect of the Summit synthesizer. Now the controls for the modulation are over here on the right hand side, but also we have got our modulation matrix which we're going to explore as well. Now the first thing I'll do is just initialize the patch and just very quickly put together a nice sort of patch. Let's go for something like this. Okay, so we've got a good basic starting point here. So we've got a good basic starting point. Now there are a lot of what I would call normal connections, and that basically means we've got dedicated controls for different aspects of the modulation controlling various things. As we saw in the oscillator video, we have a dedicated modulation envelope 2 control here. So let's bring a bit of that in. And again, I could maybe add some LFO to the pitch. So these normal connections you'll see all around the top panel of Summit. For example, here again in the shape control, let's just move the shape down, we have modulation envelope 1 controlling the shape of the sound. And again, we can also use the same control to add an element of LFO1 to it. Again, we've got our filter controls, LFO1. And our envelope controls, which allow us to use both the amp envelope and the mod envelope to control the filter at the same time. The envelope section here is based around the traditional attack, decay, sustain, release 4 faders. However, each of the envelopes inside Summit is actually a 6-stage envelope. We can look at this by going to our envelope menu, and if I move across to the amp envelope, you'll see now we have an amp envelope delay. Now if I add some delay to that signal, so let's just increase that, and what will happen, you'll see now as I press a key, it will have a delay before the actual amp is triggered. Let's decrease that time to make it a bit more manageable. This is great for getting time-based kind of effects. In fact, let's move through to the mod envelope page and add a bit of delay to that, add a bit of envelope to the filter. Now we also have a hold time, so let me just increase the attack a little bit. Let's decrease the delay so it comes in a bit quicker. Now the hold time is actually a sustained period between attack and decay. So let's bring in hold time and increase that. So this is a really useful way of us being able to shape the envelopes even more. You'll also notice that we have a loop switch. This is a particular favourite of mine, and if I click in the loop switch on mod envelope 1, and let's take the hold time down so we have no wait. You can see now this envelope is basically repeating, and it starts at the attack phase and finishes at the decay phase, and that's when it will loop back in. So again, using the hold time here, we can increase the distance between the attack time and the decay time, and again further control and shape the sound using it. Using looping envelopes is an incredibly powerful way of getting a lot of control into the sound. So for example, now we have the amp envelope looping independently of the modulation envelope. And it allows us to get some really quite unusual and interesting sounds just by managing these looping envelopes. The next section in the modulation side is the LFOs over here. Once again, let's get rid of the envelope controls. Let's just go to a basic control and apply LFO1, and we have our traditional shapes here, so triangle, sawtooth, square and sample and hold. And we've got our fade time. This will basically allow a fade in of the LFO effect. If I increase the rate into the faster area, we go very much into the audio rate. You can see this is still set to low. If we go to the high audio rate, we get increasingly fast LFO control. Way into the high audio rate. In fact, I think this is around about 1.6 kilohertz. We also have a sync control, and now when I use the rate control, you'll see on the menu that we actually can define the exact number of beats that we are using the LFO for, all the way up to 30-second triplets. The sync will lock onto any incoming clock or its own internal tempo. The two LFOs here are actually voice level LFOs, but underneath we also have global LFOs. This is an additional set of two LFOs that we can use for various things, including controlling our effects using the FX modulation matrix. So alongside all the normalized connections, we also have an incredibly powerful modulation matrix. This is accessed by pressing this menu button here and opens up the mod matrix window. The modulation matrix effectively turns Summit into a huge modular synthesizer. We have a number of different controllers, and we can send that to around about 40 different destinations in the mod matrix. So let's see how this works. Again, we'll initialize the patch and go back to our traditional sawtooth. And maybe this time I want to take the amp envelope decay value and have that controlled directly by an LFO. So here we go, LFO1 is now going to go to the amplifier decay value. Here we go, and we'll add a little bit of depth to that. Now let's turn the looping envelope on. So now we have a looping envelope, but you can see now that the LFO is actually controlling the speed. Effectively, it's controlling this control automatically for me. Again, I could say, okay, let's make this now a sample and hold LFO, a randomly generated value. And we can get some really quite interesting movement, almost self-generative now on the decay phase of this signal. If we do a similar thing for envelope 1, on the filter, again we can get this really quite unusual sensation. Let's go here and we'll take LFO2 this time, and we'll send that to modulation envelope 1 decay and add an amount. And again we'll put a bit of rate on there. Now the signal is being completely manipulated by LFO controlling the decays of both of these looping envelopes. Now, the modulation matrix really opens up a huge amount of power into the Summit synthesizer. And in fact, we can actually co-join two different controls directly to one destination. So let's go back to that first slot, and this time I'll use LFO1 but to control the decay, but only when I press the animate switch. So let's go here now to animate number 1. There it is, animate 1, and this will now light up to say something is connected to it. Let's do the same on this next one. So the second direct control, let's go to animate 2. And we'll add just a touch more depth there. So now, I just have a standard looping envelope, but now as I press the animate switches, we actually get the additional modulation of the loops. There's a huge variety of control in here, and we have 16 different slots. So for example, maybe I want to add a bit of LFO3 to the pitch of all three oscillators, oscillator 1, 2 and 3. I'll add a small amount of depth there. Let's bring all the oscillators up so we can hear them. Add a bit more depth to that, and a bit of speed. So the modulation matrix really can open up the intense power that we have in the Summit engine. Now, another great control that we have with the Summit, of course, is this wonderful key bed. Let's initialize the patch once again, and I'll bring the filter cutoff down a bit and just make a second oscillator come in, just get a nice kind of analog-y sort of sound. Now, if I go to my control here and I choose aftertouch, i.e. the pressure of the after pressure on the key bed, I can actually use this to start to increase various things. So for example, let's just, for the first point of contact, let's just try it with the filter frequency. Let's just increase that. So now as I play some notes, we're quite low on the filter cutoff, but as I apply additional pressure to the keyboard, we can use that to open up the filter. In addition, I could say, okay, let's use the aftertouch to actually send LFO1 to control the filter. LFO1 is already here, but its value is set to 0. So by using the aftertouch, we can actually increase the amount of LFO, also controlling the filter cutoff. So here with no aftertouch pressure, no LFO, adding a bit of aftertouch pressure. So aftertouch is a great way of getting additional performative control over the Summit. Now, the keyboard attached to Summit is what we call a channel aftertouch device. i.e. if I press a chord, for example here, and press one key, it's going to open up the filter for all of those voices. This is the key bed that we have in Summit. However, the engine inside Summit is actually reactive to what we call polyphonic aftertouch. And this means if I have a poly aftertouch controller, something such as the Launchpad X or the Launchpad Pro, I can actually control individual notes using polyphonic aftertouch. What this means in practical terms is I could play a chord here, and using a poly aftertouch controller, when I apply pressure onto this C note, that filter frequency will open up using the LFO. If I apply pressure on this note, the G will also increase the filter cutoff. So this means with polyphonic aftertouch controllers, we can use individual notes to control individual aspects of that note as well. So that's a good look at the different types of modulation controls that we have, the looping envelopes, the 6-stage powerful envelopes as well. Also a quick look at the modulation matrix and how we can take all of these modulators and actually plug them into various different aspects of the synthesizer, much as you would in the same way on a big modular synth. If you want to find out more about the Summit, do check out the playlist of videos that we've created concerning each of the individual sections on the synthesizer.